mention it may be because no denuclearization deal has been reached with North Korea. Joining us tonight, Paul Bracken, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, professor of political science and business at Yale University. And Paul, great to see you.
Good to be here.
This is quite a period in our history, and the geopolitics have never been more fascinating. But at the same time, some troubling conflicts geopolitically. When we talk about China, whether it's a trade issue, whether it's the South China Sea, their hemispheric designs in the Western Hemisphere, China is a real challenge, right?
China is a real challenge, and I'll just throw another element into this description, and that is yesterday, India tested an anti-satellite weapon, blowing up a satellite at low Earth orbit in outer space, clearly aimed at Chinese satellites. The U.S. is forming an alliance increasingly with India. You have China building up hypersonic missiles. These are missiles that go like 6 times faster than an M16 bullet, and they can hit our carriers. So the competition that we sort of all grew up with in Europe, stopping the Soviets with NATO and that sort of thing, has now transplanted also to Asia on a fantastically larger geographic scale. And we're fighting this in a really interesting long-term competition.
And when you bring up China's surge in space, along with China, but India, critically important, as you say, because for the first time, the United States has actually begun, under this president, an attempt to form an alliance with India. That may soon be, over the course of the next 25 years, the most populous nation on Earth, and they certainly have the largest English-speaking middle class. Henry Kissinger, whom I admire and respect mightily, he ignored India in favor of China, as did Nixon. And history could have been entirely different if we could just have gotten over that Russia thing.
I think that's probably correct. Kissinger was operating in his era back in the 1970s. Today we are in a different situation. You see the U.S. reaching out to Japan. A lot of things are going on there with missile defense, and we're reaching out to India. And you're going to see a whole bunch of new alliances. In fact, the weakest part of this thing looks to be in Europe, where the Europeans are simply not spending enough on their own defense. Let me point out on this,
as this president has maintained from the campaign of 2015 forward.
And people will say the U.S. has to show leadership here. Well, everyone's in favor of leadership, including me. I just would not confuse leadership with naivete. That if the Germans are not going to defend themselves, they can't expect the Americans to do it for them. Any system of international security and world order which depends for its success on all of the costs and all of the risks falling on one country, the United States, cannot possibly succeed in the 21st century. You're going to see new alliances and new coalitions. And that's the significance of small things like the anti-satellite test that India did the other day, and U.S. alliances with other countries, which are improving. Many countries are joining us.
And this president, rebuilding our military, rebuilding America, in point of fact, as he suggested the other day, also reorienting American elitist thinking about NATO, its role, and the very relationships, alliances that you're talking about when it comes to Europe, specifically Germany, and the emerging Asia.
Yes, and another trend I definitely see, I've never seen the Pentagon more open to innovation than it is today.
That's quite a statement.
It really is, because they usually resist it, often for good reasons, but sometimes bad reasons, bureaucratic things. But they're really adapting the new technologies of undersea warfare, drones, cyber, trying to use them in creative ways. The war colleges are changing their curriculum. It's a very interesting development.
Paul Bracken, always interesting talking with you, and great to see you. Thanks for being
Good to be here.
Thank you. Paul Bracken. Up next, AOC, Beethoven.